stream of the voice of God that I'm hearing is talking about how consistency.
Yes.
The kingdom from the inside out.
Yes.
The bringing us back. That's what Jesus did.
Hallelujah.
Bringing us back to where we were before the fall of man.
Yes.
You know, I've heard some ministers describe it this way, that we do as ministers of God, there's inner court and outer court ministry. And what they mean by that is that there is the ministry to where, you know, the faith and the healings of the gifts of healings, gifts of faith, things that minister to the needs of the people. The outward things. Because Jesus said God cares about them. He knows that you need these things, and He cares. But then Jesus said, but seek ye first the kingdom, and the things will be added, or they will play out. They'll come. And so we see a lot of outer court ministry, and it's important, and I thank God for it. That's where miracles happen for you, and you know, in your in the needs that you have in life.
Yes.
Inner court ministry would be described as ministering to the heart of the man, to where that the soul is mature. The soul of man becomes mature and strong and strengthened in the inside.
Yes.
And in fact, 3 John verse 2 says, beloved, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in health. Now that's outer court. That's your outer court. That's your outward needs.
Right.
Prosper and be in health. He said, I want you to prosper, and I want you to be in health, even as what? Even as your soul prospers. That's the inner court thing. And I've always seen, when I looked at that, I always saw that there was a conjunction there, that the way that it would work. Even as a young Christian, I just knew intuitively by reading that verse that the way that this was to work was that the inside would be prosperous. And that prosperous inside would cause a prosperous outside. Like Linda was sharing, you know, there was such, inside her was this word, inside her was this belief, this faith, this something that even in a terrible condition, that thing was inside and it stood up. And it said, I will walk tall. Come on. And that's prospering inside that causes prosperity outside. Now, I want to talk about soul prosperity this morning because I thank God for all that the ministry to the outer parts of our life. But what I see in our travels, I see that there is such a need, such a dearth, if you will, in the body of Christ for really prospering inside, to where they're not living from need to need. I heard the Lord speaking through Pastor this morning and talking about how this is not supposed to be sporadic. It's not supposed to be a spiritual spasm. It's not supposed to be an occurrence. I don't even believe in divine intervention so much anymore when your soul is prospering and full of the living God Himself. How does He intervene when He's one with you, when He's right there in you? Right? And instead of it being sporadic, there's a consistency of a walk. That's the living back where we were before the fall of man. And I am 1,000% convinced that Jesus did that work. I'm seeing that play out in my own life. How about you? Now, when we talk about these things, I can't help but go back and look at where it all went south, where it all went bad. And we know where that was. That was in Genesis 3, right? We chose the knowledge of good and evil. By doing that, we chose to go independent. We chose to make it about us. We chose to be like God. We're going to do this. We're going to judge with this knowledge of good and evil. And if you look at the condition before the fall, if you see, you know, before, I always point out that there we were in the garden. God put us in that garden. But His presence, and He walked there in the cool of the day. And we were naked, and we were not ashamed. Amen. And we go on our own, and the first thing that we sense is shame, because we look at ourselves and we judge ourselves with a judgment that God hadn't given us all this time, and we had been naked all this time, but God never said anything about it because it didn't matter, because it was never about us anyway. God was our life, right? In fact, we were created that way. We were created without that covering, without that protection like many of the other animals and nature was given, because we were created to be one with Him. God was going to be our protection. God was going to be our provision. God was to be our life. That was this special connection. God wanted a bride. He wanted someone to be one with Him. And He would, and Him, in all of His bigness, and all of His who He is, and all of His love, that He created us to be in union with Him, that we would simply be receiving and living with the love and the goodness and the abundance of God all the time.
Right.
But we chose to go on our own.
Sure.
And so now it's on us, right? Now it became on us to do this. Now we got to protect ourselves. Now we got to defend ourselves. Now we got to provide ourselves. And that's why God said, oh, Adam, did you eat of that tree? Who told you you were naked?
All right.
Nobody, I never said anything about it. I don't do that. There's no condemnation in me. You would never feel ashamed. You would never feel afraid if you hadn't gone that way. Adam, it's going to be hard now. See, God didn't curse the ground. God didn't curse the earth. God said, Adam, for your sake now, the earth is going to be cursed.
Well.
You did this, Adam. And I told you not to. And he said, it's going to be hard. Now this earth is going to give grudgingly. You're going to eat by the sweat of your brow.
Right.
Woman, you're going to be in pain. It's going to be hard. And we saw ourselves in that condition. And the first thing we began to feel was shame. We felt fear.
Sure.
Something that only comes from that knowledge of good and evil. Because that's why God asked the question, did you eat of that tree?
All right.
Because there's no way that you could have those feelings. There's no way that you could be experiencing those things unless you had gone that way. But you know what, Adam, it was an honest question. He just said, did you eat of the tree? And basically he's saying, you must have eaten of that tree.
Right.
That's the only way you get there. But Adam, now watch this, Adam, who God was his all in all. God was his best. He was his life, his protection, his covering, his best friend, his lover. Now that he's on his own, he's feeling different. And now God is not all of that to him. Now God is his antagonist. God's his accuser now.
Right.
Because we know that because Adam starts to go into defense mode right off the bat. We see that right on the first day of the fall. We see man go into defense. Because why does he go into defense? Because if he don't protect him, who will now? Because he's on his own.
Lord God.
So he goes into defense mode. And there wasn't anything to defend.
Well.
There was no accusation.
Right.
But he goes into defense, and you can see where we relate, because we see this all over the place around us. Humanity always in self-defense, and that's where we began to learn the art of self-defense.
Well.
And it's caused so many ugly things. It's caused national wars, trouble in families, splits in churches. It's caused all the trouble because everybody is on their own, or they feel a sense of being on their own. And that does not have to be in the church of the living God.
Amen.
So there's a mind renewal. There is a truth that makes us free, that we're to know about, that we really have been restored, and we're home in this, and we're not alone in this, and we're in union with God. But so many Christians still feel like they're on their own. That's why we run into this all the time. People that love Jesus, people that know a lot about the Bible, and they still say, help me, I'm in this situation. I wonder, it almost seems like I wonder, does God care? Where is God in this? Does He hear me? I've heard Him come through, but will He come through for me in this situation? Why? Because they feel that separation.
Yes.
And they don't know the truth that makes them free. These are believers. They don't know that we've been brought back home and made one. This is my renewal, knowing the truth. I want to tell you a truth this morning. And it's a truth that if you can see this morning, it changes everything. This is important. Soul prosperity. Being rich all the time inside. Always being full. Always having everything that you need, because you're not Adam that's separated from God. You are in union with God. You're married to Him this morning.
Hallelujah.
Adam goes into defense mode. Did you eat of that tree?
Right.
Self-defense. Well, the woman.
Right.
Now think of this. Did you ever notice this? When Adam and Eve first met in the Bible, they came together, and Adam declared something about this woman.
Yes.
He declared a union, a oneness.
Right.
He said, you are flesh of my flesh. You are bone of my bone.
Yes.
Hmm? We are one here. And you know why he could say that? Because before the fall, we know of what it's like to be in union.
All right.
We know what it's like to be one.
Yes.
Hmm? And your reflection of how you relate to God is it will affect how you relate to the world around you. So now Adam feels alone. It's not him and God like this anymore.
Right.
Now it's him and God like this.
Right.
And he doesn't even feel like this with his wife now.
That's
He
right.
feels like he can throw her under the bus and he'll still be good.
Right.
Are y'all hearing that?
Yes.
The one that he once declared was flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone, now she's somebody separate. Now the woman did it.
Yes.
I'm still clean here.
All right.
And not only does he feel separate from the woman, but he says, the woman that you gave me, God, both of you guys are culpable in this. You guys figure out who's got the most blame, but it's not me. Because God, if you had never given her to me, this never would have happened, I promise you. Huh? It wasn't my fault. I was a victim here. I didn't ask for this. And so what we see in mankind, I want to bring it this way because this is something we see every day, and maybe you see this trying to work in your own hearts at times in your life, that this is where self-defense comes. It's simply because man feels alone and feels like there's a relationship with God, but it's not the real relationship that God made with us. It's a relationship where God is out there somewhere.
Yes, Lord.
I don't even say that I walk with God anymore. That means He's beside me. I mean, we have become one. The union has happened.
Yes.
Hmm?
Hallelujah.
When Ephesians talks about a man and a woman becoming one, he says this is a mystery, but I'm really talking about Christ and His church. We become one.
Glory to God.
I don't know about you, but I'm not waiting, 1,000 years from now to have some kind of a wedding ceremony with Jesus. I am one with Him. I am married to the Lord. I am one. We became in union. We are one. He married me when He came and identified with my dead, my trespasses and my sins and my death. He came into union with me.
Glory.
And thank God because of this union, when He rose up, I rose up too because we were together. Because we're one. It wasn't like Jesus there and says, come on, Rick, I don't need this come up hither thing. I think He already made the call and says, come on, we're going higher.
Yes.
And He took us higher. Are y'all hearing me? And when you see this, you're not trying to go higher anymore. You're already one with Him. When He went higher, you went higher. Now, when you know this, that's soul prosperity.
Yes. Hallelujah.
When you don't know it, it's soul poverty.
Poverty.
That's when man entered into soul poverty that day.
Yes.
And the soul poverty was simply a separation mentality.
Yes.
Huh? That they're one individual and God is another.
Another. My God.
And you lose that
Yes.
in the truth when you understand it's me and Him all together all the time. I don't have to enter into His presence anymore. When I wake up, we're home. And see, the reality of it makes it an experience in your life. When you know this as a reality, it begins to become your everyday experience.
Yes.
And it's not a religious spasm that you have to go find somewhere.
Come on.
We've been hearing that. Hear what God is saying to us this morning as a group.
Thank God.
You see, soul prosperity gets us out of what we used to have. The church is maturing ever since the birth of the church.
Amen.
Huh? And the problem that church has sometimes is that they get stuck in a stage.
Sure.
Huh? They learn to walk, but when they first learned to walk, it was kind of a waddle. And then when they're 40 years old, they're still waddling because that's how it used to do. That brought us success. It got me off the ground back then. Huh? But see, soul prosperity is really just knowing a truth of a finished work, that we're home. Are y'all hearing me?
Amen.
Soul poverty makes you feel alone.
Yes.
And God becomes a tool
That's right.
to help us. mostly in our outer court.
All right.
And you know, when we're talking about soul prosperity, we're talking about the true riches. This is the true riches. I mean, this is heaven on earth. It ain't about what's out there.
Amen.
Everything that's good out there that God brings, that's just icing on the cake. That's just blessing.
Right.
But you know, if you think it's about God just doing all the stuff out there, God already gave us a picture of what that's like. He took Israel 40 years, and He showed us what it's like to take a people for 40 years and answer every single prayer, take care of every single need. They never had a need, They always wore new shoes every single day, new clothes every single day. Never old clothes, never had to find something in the closet that was like, well, this is old, but it'll do. Every day it was brand new clothes. That's what the Bible said. Huh? Food, like, man, wouldn't you like to get fed by that at least once? Every day. They're traveling along, they get thirsty, water will come out of a rock. I mean, it don't matter if somebody wants to rise up against them, God will go in front of them, take care of it. Every need of life that they had, God took care of it. And in Deuteronomy 8, He said, I did this so you would know that man doesn't live by bread alone. I fed you with bread that your fathers didn't know, so you know that man doesn't live by bread alone. In other words, so you would learn that this is not enough. Man needs the Word of God. Man doesn't live by bread alone. He lives by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. You need relationship.
Amen. Hallelujah.
And we have this detailed picture. Because so many people just feel like, well, if God would just do this, and if He would do that, and He would do that, then I'd be happy. Then I'd have revival.
Right.
Huh? But He says, here's what it's like for me to just do this and that and that. And He knows what we have need of. He took care of theirs. But Jesus didn't die to make our life better. He came to give us real life.
Real life.
Soul prosperity.
Hallelujah.
Soul prosperity. Full of faith.
Yes.
All the time. Huh? Even if it gets hard, even if you don't understand, even if it's looking ugly, full of faith.
Mighty God.
Full of faith.
Yes.
Full of joy.
Yes.
Even if people are ugly, they don't like you or your mama and all that, just full of love. You get so big inside. You get so big. People ask me about, I get this all the time because I just talk about love, the perfect love of God all the time. And I get this, Judy and I get this all the time, and we understand it. But people say, well, what about toxic relationships? What about abusive relationships? Now, if it's physical, I say, get out of there. Don't ever let nobody hit you. Love them from long distance if you have to. Huh? And there have been times in my past where I felt like just for my own sanity, I had to just kind of just break away from people. And all. But you know what? In one of those situations like that, you know, I was feeling bad about it because I felt like it was hard to walk in love towards a certain person who I felt like had betrayed me. And I said, God, I don't like this. I said, I want help with this. And God, you know what? God didn't say, well, Rick, just walk in love and forgive and snap out of it. Do the right thing. You know what He said to me? This was many years ago. He said, son, you're going to grow so big in my love where things that other people do won't affect your soul negatively.
Hallelujah.
Huh?
Hallelujah.
And He didn't just, at that time, He didn't just fix me that day, but I noticed over the years that just what He said happened. You start to prosper in your soul. You get bigger inside.
Praise.
Where things back then, I thought that people doing this, I can't stand them doing this to me. Oh, God, help. Now it's just like, they're just people to love. They're just people to bless. They're just people that are selfish like every other Adam trying to figure this thing out and protect themselves and take care of themselves. That's all they're doing like everybody else was doing. Because they feel so alone. That's why they do the dirty deeds they do. That's why they had to throw me under the bus a couple of times just to save themselves. That's what Adam does. That's what people feel. That's what people do. That's the best they can do in certain situations. They feel because they don't know.
They don't know.
Are y'all hearing me?
Wow, God.
They don't know how blessed they are without doing that. They don't know. They don't know how much God loves them. They don't know that God's going to take care of them. They don't know that God's with them. They don't know that. But the truth is what makes us free.
Thank God.
Are y'all hearing me?
Yes,
People put themselves in the best light. They're retelling a story of something that happened, and somehow they always look like the good guy. Every single time they're the good guy. Why do we do that? Because we feel like if we don't blow the trumpet, nobody else will. But when you know somebody loves you, when you're in love.
Hallelujah.
Like Jesus said, they called him demon-possessed. They called him all kinds of things. He's a sinner. He's this, that, and the other. He even called him a Samaritan. Horrible. Jesus said, well, there's one that bears witness.
Yes.
That's the one I listen to.
Amen.
At that time, we talked about Judy's at her, we were sitting there on that porch, and Judy's brothers were being brothers and kind of poking fun at her and trying to needle her and egg her on and making fun of something she was wearing and just doing what her brothers always did. I said, why don't you ask me what I think? She said, what do you think? I said, I think you look amazing. She said, you know what? I'm going to go with that. I'll go with the one voice rather than the many voices. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes,
See, but when she knows, she says, you know what? Because what you say trumps what everybody else says. Huh? When you know you're one with God, what He says takes precedence over everything else.
Glory.
Am I in the right place this morning? Are y'all hearing anything? See, when we don't know this is where all the trouble comes. This is where all the strife comes from. Because Adam, by himself, he took on these resident attorneys, and we've all heard them. We've all seen them at some time in our past, at least, if not now. These are those resident attorneys that no matter where you're at, no matter what you believe, no matter what you think, no matter what the situation was, no matter what the contention was, you're always right because these things always have a way. Or you got some kind of a disagreement with somebody. You're always right, and because you've got these things inside you that just, man, they know how to defend you. They are defense attorneys and they are good.
Sure.
Huh? And even though love keeps no record of wrongs, you can always pull out a file and say, well, you've done this, and you've done that, and you've done the other, and all that. And people say, why do I do that? It's because you don't know how close to God you really are. You don't know how cared for you are. You don't know how protected you really are. You don't know how loved you really are. Y'all hearing me? When you know this, see, this is something that's really, really simple here. I'm sorry, but this is what soul prosperity is about.
Yes.
It's knowing that union. It's knowing that we have been brought back home, that we're not by ourselves anymore.
Hallelujah.
Huh?
Glory to God.
And we judge it. The soul prosperity really is a relational thing. We don't judge it by, Reverend Wonderful got a big house. I'm still living in the shack.
All right.
Huh? We don't judge it by any of that stuff. We don't judge it even if some things have taken time to work out in our lives. We don't judge it by anything in this world.
Amen.
We judge it by the person we know.
Yes.
Huh? And knowing the goodness, and this is why we just always talk about the goodness and love of God.
Yes.
Because you cannot draw near in your heart. You can't know how close and how one you really are without knowing that He loves you unconditionally, without knowing that he cares for you, He wants the best for you, and He knows the best for you. He really, really does. And sometimes your situation might not always look like that, but if you know Him, huh? If you know Him and His love and His goodness, then you start to be able to hear His voice, and you start to be able to begin to know His personality, and you begin to get comfortable and feel safe and secure in it.
So true.
Huh?
My God.
I get to where I'm walking more and more just carefree, and I don't know what I'm going to deal with tomorrow. And I don't even care anymore because I'll be with somebody.
Yes.
Like Linda said, I'm going to walk straight and tall and with someone that I love.
Yes. Hallelujah.
Someone will always be there. And not there, always be.
Hallelujah.
Do you understand this?
Yes.
Paul said this is a great mystery. I know.
Yes.
It's hard to understand how a man and a woman become one thing instead of two.
Yes.
I know it's a mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and His church. This is what happened, he said.
Thank God forever. Glory.
You'll never be alone. You'll never be helpless, hapless, and hopeless.
That's right. Amen.
But look at the soul prosperity. When you look at the soul prosperity, when you look at the kingdom, when you look at Jesus,
Yes.
huh? The storms of Galilee don't bother you. You're going to the other side. What does it matter if it's sunny or stormy? Who cares? You're going to the other side.
Hallelujah.
You're not alone in this.
Jesus.
But when you feel alone, then you're like the 12.
Sure.
We're going to die.
Right.
Jesus, don't you care?
Yeah.
You ever heard that one?
Right.
Ever said that one? Jesus, don't you care?
Yes.
Don't you care that I'm going down here?
All right.
Well, he was in that same storm,
Right.
but his perception was different.
Different. Yes. Glory
I
to
and my
God.
Father are one.
Hallelujah.
We're going down here.
Praise the
I
Lord.
said we're going to the other side. We're going to the other
Yes.
side.
Yes.
And he calmed the storm.
Jesus.
Not because he was afraid of it. He didn't care. He could have went back to sleep.
Sure.
He calmed it for somebody else.
Amen.
Did outer court ministry for them.
My God.
The one that had the inner court ministry
Yes.
completed.
Yes.
Huh? Are you hearing me?
Absolutely.
So we have those resident attorneys that always defend us, always put us in the best light.
Oh,
You know,
boy.
2 Thessalonians 2 talked about those who believe a lie.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny. I always thought it was funny. He didn't say anything about the one who told it. He says the one that believes it. Because it's believing the lie
Yeah.
that'll condemn you. It's believing
Right.
the lie that'll produce the death in you.
Yes, for sure.
And all the problems are external.
Yes.
The problems are my situation, my circumstances. The problems are somebody else. Pray for me, Brother Rick. You know, my spouse makes it hard. My boss makes it hard. They're not fair to me out there on the job. They're persecuting me on the job.
All right.
They're like, well, how are they persecuting you? Are you preaching Jesus all the time? No, they don't even know I'm a Christian, but they're persecuting me. It's my boss. It's my job. It's Trump. It's Obama. It's somebody.
Yeah. All right.
Huh? What happens when you do that? You feel yourself getting bitter.
Sure.
You feel yourself getting smaller. You begin to, a person in soul poverty often tries to control
Yes.
because they feel alone, so they're always in fear.
Sure. My Lord.
They're never completely safe from fear.
My Lord.
So they try to put safeguards in their life
Right.
to protect themselves. Look at the book of Job. We need to look at the Bible somewhere here, don't we? Look at the book of Job, chapter 1. You know, Job was an upright man. He was a good man, right? I believe, according to what the Bible here says in Job chapter 1, that he lived a good, clean, moral life. I believe he was devout, serious about God. He was a very blessed man,
Right.
very wealthy, right? And had his big house and beautiful property. Of course, he had that trailer in the back lot there where his kids were living, and they'd have these parties together.
Yeah.
And Job didn't know what was going on there, but he was afraid just in case something would be going wrong.
Sure.
So verse 5 says, chapter 1, verse 5 says, so it was when the days of feasting had run their course, that Job would send and sanctify them, and he'd rise early in the morning, and he would offer burnt offerings according to the number of his children. For Job said, it could be that my sons have sinned, cursed God in their hearts.
Right.
So Job did this regularly. Now, he didn't know if they were or not. But just in case,
Right.
it's kind of like how I used to pray back when they had me so scared when I first got saved. They told me that it was only the sins that I would confess to God that would be forgiven. So my salvation was based on my memory, and so I had to remember and then vocally confess, and I would do it before I went to bed every night and say, God, forgive me for this and that and the other and the other. And because I didn't trust my memory, any of y'all ever do this? And so I'd say, and if there was any other thing that I forgot, forgive that too, thinking and hoping that would cover it all. Huh? That's kind of what Job's doing here. If there's anything else that they've done, forgive this.
Right.
Huh? Because I didn't want to be unforgiven, that's why I prayed like that, and I felt like if I'm unforgiven, number one, if I die tonight in my sleep, I'm going to hell, and if I wake up with these unforgiven sins, my life would be a hell. And so Job says, maybe they've cursed God in their hearts, who knows?
Oh my.
Maybe they've sinned in some way.
Right.
But the reason Job did, because Job was afraid, he didn't want nothing bad happening to his kids.
Right.
So he's going to keep them covered. No matter what they might or might not have done, I'm just going to make sure, I'm going to cover every base and make sure that nothing bad can happen to them.
Right.
No judgment can be on them, no curse can be on them, devil can't get in, I'm taking care of all of this. And he would do this regularly, he says.
Sure.
Just in case. Why? Because Job was afraid.
He was
And we know that's sort of the centerpiece of the whole story. To understand it is in chapter 3, verse 25, when the bad things happened anyway, because he couldn't control them. Even though he tried, Job was a controller because he was afraid.
Right.
Huh? You know controlling people. You think they're just mean? They're scared.
Yes.
They're scared.
Without a doubt.
They ain't just evil, they're scared.
Yes.
Huh? And they're trying to protect them. That's what they're doing. They're doing the best they can with what limited knowledge they have. Because they feel alone. And if I don't control the situation, if I don't protect me, if I don't do everything I can to make sure nobody hurts me,
Oh, my.
huh? Those of us that have been hurt really bad, maybe you've been abused, molested, maybe, things happen. Some people that just seem so hard and so mad, bitter and angry. What's happened? They're just trying to protect themselves because they don't want you hurting them.
Right.
Are y'all hear anything?
Sure.
And bless their hearts. They're not to be condemned, but it's just it's a condition of soul poverty that just needs to know the love of God.
Right.
Know that they're loved and there's a God who cares for them and knows their best and wants their best. And so they can be safe and secure in that, and they can quit all their stuff, quit controlling.
Amen. Yes.
Because controllers, it's funny, they can't control anyway.
No.
You try, but it's futile.
Oh,
You can't
God.
control everything. Job tried to control it all, tried to safeguard everything, but horrible things happened anyway.
Right.
And in chapter 3, verse 25, he said, well, the thing that I greatly feared has come upon me. This is what I was afraid of. This is what I was protecting myself against. And I did everything I know to do, but it happened anyway.
Right.
That's why he had these wrong ideas about God. He said, so what good can we do? God will just do anything, no matter how good we are. That's what he thought.
Right.
But then, Lord, toward the end of the book, when God finally reveals himself to him, Job didn't know. See, everybody say, you got to understand this story. Job did not know God. He was devout.
Right.
He was serious about God, but he didn't know God. He says, you know what? Once God revealed himself, he says, oh my goodness. He said, I've spoken things that I didn't understand. I heard about you at the hearing of my ears, but now I see you.
Yes. Glory.
I hate myself.
Amen. He did say it. Hallelujah.
Everything I said about you was wrong.
Yes.
I didn't know what I was talking. He said, I spoke of things that I knew not. Huh? And you know what happened? He got the real after that.
Yes.
When God revealed himself to him, then he got not only outward blessing that he had before, but he got soul prosperity
Yes. Soul
too.
prosperity.
And his end was greater than his beginning.
Yes.
Because
Glory to God.
now he's blessed greater than he ever was before.
Hallelujah.
The blessing he tried to protect. Yeah. Remember, Jesus said, he that seeks to save his life will lose it, but he that will lose it will find it. See, because what God has better than us protecting what we think that we need to defend, our little reputation, our little whatever. God said, oh, I got something so much better for you than that.
Yes, Lord.
If you'll give up protecting that, you can open your hands to receive something so much better. I remember a man that was, a friend and I we were working on my car many years ago, and we needed a part, so we called a salvage yard, and the guy said they had the part, so we went there to go pull the part, and so we get there, and this little old guy, not real old, but probably looked older than he was the way he acted, but he kind of met us at the gate. We said, hey, we called and for this part, and you said that you had it, and right off the bat, without anything, he just said, yeah, I do, but don't think I'm going to pull it for you. Some people come here and think I'm going to do all the work. I hope you brought your own tools. You're going to go back there and get it. It's right over there. And we're like, okay. And then we got to working on it, and we realized we needed another tool to be able to get it off. And so went to the little shed where he was at. Asked him if he had that tool. Yeah, I do. He said, don't think I'm going to give it to you. I tell you what, people, I'm tired of getting kicked around, abused, and people stealing my tools and breaking them, and then I get stuck with the bill. And he said, you leave your driver's license with me, and I'll let you use this wrench. You know? And so he did, you know, and my friend pulled out his license, gave it to him, and that guy says, I know you might think I'm a grouch. And John says, I do. He says, you're about the grouchiest man I have ever seen in my life. Well, I'm just tired of running around. And I felt so bad for him, and I really felt bad for his family, whoever they were. I just thought, this man had been hurt. He'd been stepped on. He'd been abused. He'd been ripped off, you know. And he's going to make sure nothing ever happened. That's never going to happen again. So he devises his protections, saying nobody going to ever use him like that again. Nobody ever going to get the best of him. And what was protecting him turned him into this little, bitter man in a small little world, prison, torment, hell. But praise God, nobody going to take a wrench from him.
Oh my God.
But see, when you feel like you got to do what you got to do, when you're all alone, when your soul is impoverished, that's the best people can come up with.
Oh yeah.
They're not just evil and mean. They're hurting. They're scared.
Right.
When you understand that, that's part of soul prosperity is the spirit of wisdom and understanding. Huh? You can see people not as a rival, but somebody just needs some love.
Yes.
Oh, come on.
Yes.
Perfect love.
Perfect.
Aren't you glad God didn't put a wall around himself?
Amen.
I'm glad when I accused him of wrongdoing, before I was a believer and I shook my fist at heaven and said, I don't believe in that God of the Bible, when I did all the things and thought all the things about God that I thought, I'm so glad he didn't protect himself from me. Why? Because he's perfect love. And there's no fear in love. Therefore, there's no control. It's just love. That's why I don't really go with the idea that some people have about God being in control. Now, ultimately, he's got his arms around the whole thing, but within that, he allows so many things. Because, I mean, the idea that, you know, the reason I tripped just now is because God did that, because God's in control and everything that happens is God doing it, you know. No, God's not in control, he's in love.
Oh, hallelujah.
And there's no fear in love. That's why God's not a controller. That's why we were allowed to go that way in the first place, and eat of the knowledge of good and evil, even though it hurt. Because that shows you right there, God's not a controller.
Right.
Now, the lamb had already been slain from the beginning.
Yes, he has.
So he's got the whole thing.
Yes, indeed.
All in his will, his heart, and his mind. But and he also knew that the church would be a baby 2,000 years ago, and she would grow in the love of God.
Yes.
That's real maturity.
Yes.
Knowing that you're loved.
Yes.
Just knowing that you're loved.
Oh, hallelujah.
Then something happens. Your mind starts to change. You're not, instead of someone who just sees the worst happen in any situation, you feel secure, and you just have a heart of faith and expectancy.
Glory.
Sometimes, like, I don't know how God's going to do this, but it's going to be fun to watch. Because the soul is already prosperous, and these things happen as the soul prospers. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
I found that what God said was true. I didn't have to put up barriers to toxic, controlling people anymore, because you get so big where what they do can't affect you. They can't control you if they wanted to. You just...
Yes.
And the reason they can't control you is because you don't feel dependent upon them.
Amen. So
You feel big enough where you can just bless and you can love.
So true.
You don't have
Hallelujah.
to have the approval of men. You don't have to have the pat on the back. You don't have to have somebody just saying good things about you. You can love anyway. Judy and I just had this November. We were back in her hometown. She was having her 50th class reunion in high school. And y'all, see, they didn't even laugh. They believed it. No, it was her fifth reunion. 30th, right? Anyway. And so anyway, right before we go, you know, she was telling me, all these old feelings of high school and some of the bad memories are coming up, and I just, you know, and you start to, because you haven't seen these people in a long time, like, what if it's still like they were in high school towards me and me towards, you know, what if it's still that dynamic going on? I'm not looking forward to this. And then we sat down and we just decided, we said, you know what? We're going to go there and we're going to love these people. And if they don't like us, we're just going to love them.
All right. All right.
See, when you're prosperous in your soul, you can do that.
Yeah.
You don't go there and be real small.
Yeah.
They're not looking at me. That one didn't shake my hand. What's that mean? A poverty soul will do that.
Yes. Yes.
Aren't you glad we're not needy?
Amen.
Aren't you glad we got it all with God?
Yes.
It's fullness.
Hallelujah, Jesus.
It's fullness.
My God.
Father, I love you and I thank you for
Yes, I
unspeakable
love you.
gift.
Hallelujah.
Would y'all stand up?
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
Beloved, I wish above all things that you prosper and be in health. I've been in want and I've been in abundance, and you know, it is much more fun. I can't lie to you. But with soul prosperity, it doesn't feel any different on the inside. Right? With soul prosperity, there's times we run out of money. But you know what you hear in our house when we're in our conversations? I feel so rich. I am so wealthy. We believe it with all of our heart. I am so wealthy, even when I don't seem to have any cash sometimes. I feel so rich. What? Because I'm set for eternity, and so are you. Right? You're going to outlast any of these outward things that are going on. Jesus said, in the world there's tribulation, but celebrate, be happy. I've overcome all that stuff. How did he overcome it? By coming to live inside you, being one with you, giving you a new life, abundant life, a new nature, so that whatever is going on out there, you have abundance in your soul. Are y'all listening to me? And so this is where it's at. I want you to hear this morning. I know it's very, very simple, but yet it's so powerful, and it's so, this clarifies so much in life. This will give you heaven on earth every single day of your life. I'm experiencing it, and I'm growing in it. So that makes it even more exciting. Because I've got an eternity of receiving that I can do. Because we're one with God. He's not beside me. He's a part of me. It's like this. If I say, you say, Rick, would you like something to drink? I say, yeah, give me some tea and some water. Almost everybody would bring me 2 glasses and set them beside each other, 1 tea and 1 water. That's tea with water. And I say, no, I don't mean that. I mean tea and water. So I take the tea and I pour it in my water. And that's what I meant by tea and water. Not 2 separate vessels here, but one. For he that is joined to the Lord is what? One spirit, not 2. Not 2. Oh, come on, that's a big one. Not 2. It's not tea, a glass of tea and a glass of water. It's not you and God. Not even you and God this way. It's one. Amen. Once you pour the tea in that water, you can't tell when one starts and the other one ends, because what it has become now is tea and water. Yes. What are you drinking there? That looks good. It's tea and water. Come on. Huh? And the 2, that's how the 2 have become one. And if you knew the truth, if you can see the truth this morning, Holy Ghost, help us. If you can see the truth this morning, you walk out of here with a spring in your step, knowing that you and God are forever one entity. And it would never be, well, I want this, but God wants that. It'll be, me and God together are walking this thing. Oh, I'm in a hard spot, but I'm not alone. Me and God are together walking in this thing. Back when I was $100,000 in debt, and I'm praying, saying, God, this mountain is the biggest thing I've ever faced. I don't see how, even with all the good things I've seen you do in my life, it's going to take me a long time to dig out of this one. And he says, I will not be in debt And I said, well, I know you won't, but I am. And he said, no. This was years ago. He said, no, we are one. I will not be in debt. We will walk this out of this together. Woo! Well, Lord, I can't walk. I will not be lame.
Come on now.
You and I will walk together. Are y'all hearing this? Well, Lord, it's hard. People in my life are hard and all that. And he says, I have great peace and joy. We're going to walk this together. Come on. You'll never be afraid again. You'll never feel insecure again because you will be in security all the days of your life. Come on, somebody. Somebody says, well, what about expecting all these other things? Soul prosperity is great, but what about these other things? Are you saying that just be happy inside while everything's crumbling around you? No. As your soul prospers, be in health. Come on. It flows from the inside out. And this way you don't need a spasm. Huh? You don't have to wait for Benny's crusade before you can get it. You wake up and you're walking in it and you're walking it out. Every single day. Because the truth is, you can see it, you're going to do this for eternity. You will always be with God through eternity. I tell you, it makes a lot of ideas crumble. Even the idea, Pastor, where people talk about, I can't wait to get to heaven and just sit at the feet of Jesus and gaze in his eyes. If you knew the truth, see, that's a separation mentality. If you knew the truth, you're with him in the seat right now. You're seated with him. And when we say we're seated with him, when I say just visualize Jesus seated on the throne, we don't look up like that because we're already up. When we visualize Jesus seated on the throne, it's more like this. Are y'all seeing this? Come on, this is true. This ain't poetic. This ain't poetry. This is the new creation reality. From the inside. Breath of the Spirit from the inside out. See, as we're standing here, some of you start to feel so rich right now. And certain problems, issues that were in the life, they seem to just kind of like turn into a shadow. Because that's the life Jesus came to give us. No wonder we love him. Found out he loves us. No wonder we love the people. Father, I give you glory. I thank you for your unspeakable gift. I thank you for your great love. That you would call us your own. Thank you for the power of your Holy Spirit to reveal a thing to us. To open our eyes wide-eyed to a degree that it's the reality every waking moment. Every night when we lay our head down, there's such a power within us of the Holy Spirit that is so real and so full that we know and see the experience of really not being of this world. Because of our soul's condition, we are ambassadors of heaven. Now, right now, where you're at, if you're seeing this revelation of soul prosperity, if you're seeing it and you're feeling the life of it rise up in you, where you're feeling wealthy, you're feeling full inside, you just have this awareness that everything you need, you've got it today. If that's you and you need your outer court ministered to from the inner court, because you're believing now, you're seeing something, and something is flowing from the inside of you. And if you do need healing this morning, then be healed this morning, right now. Be healed. If you need a financial miracle, then just have it this morning, because you're walking out of darkness and into light every single day. Oh, I'm telling you, you can be so happy and excited and expectant every day, because we're only going to grow in the knowledge of this, so it's only going to get better and better and better. Oh, there might be some circumstances that go up and down, but inside we're getting better. Behold! Behold! It's in the receiving from the fullness that we already have. God bless you guys.
Hallelujah. All raise your hands and praise Him this